Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks to y'all for being here. Everybody that's in the room, everybody that's online, hopefully you were trying to find Cougars Care Recognize Your Friend in Need. That's where you are. If you didn't mean to be here, no sweat, but you're probably going to be bored if you stay. But if everybody was meaning to be here for this, welcome. I'm excited that you're here. My name's Nathaniel. I'm the outreach coordinator for the University Counseling Center. I'm going to be hanging out with you all today for the next just a little over an hour. We're booked until 2:30, but it probably won't quite go the whole time. We're hopefully gonna have us a good session today. But before we get started, Jocelyn, if you could give me the next slide. A lot of you are probably here because you want to learn, and this is a beautiful, wonderful thing for you. But also a lot of you are probably here because you need SONA credits, or your professor offered you some extra credit, or this, that, or the other thing, right? So please, if you need your attendance verified for whatever reason, make sure you stick around until the end. At the end, we'll pop up a QR code on the screen. You can scan that and fill out the satisfaction survey, and then add your name to it at the end. And that's how we'll verify that you were here, and that's how we'll make sure that you get your credits. Those of you that are particularly here for SONA credits, please make sure you are signed up in the SONA system, because I grant credits to everybody that came that signed up. But if you came but you're not signed up, I don't know if you need the credits, right? So like, make sure that you are signed up in that SONA portal. If you're not, that's fine. I mean, you can email me and we can figure it out later, but that's just what's going to make the whole system the easiest. If you need any questions, need anything, whatever, just email me. My email is nfernandez. Feel free to reach out and just let me know what you need, and we'll make sure it happens. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be talking about some mental health stuff, right? And sometimes mental health stuff is intense, right? We'll be talking about various mental health crises, harm to others, abuse, suicide, things of those nature, right? Take care of yourself. I mean, you don't need to engage in something that's overwhelming you. Also, the restrooms, for those of you that are in person here, the restrooms in this building are right there out that door. So if you need to take a break just to calm yourself down, or if you need to take a break because you have to go to the restroom, literally just right out there. To take care of yourselves. We're going to be in small groups a little bit today, every once in a while. We're not going to be asking you to share deep life stories or anything like that with one another, but we just hope that you can be respectful to one another. Those of you that are in the room will just kind of like get into groups with folks around us. Those of you online will throw you into breakout rooms. As much as you're able to online in those breakout groups, feel free to unmute and turn your cameras on. You can stay on mute and camera off in the main room, because obviously it's awkward otherwise. But when you talk to each other, please do talk to each other. We've got several folks in here. Jocelyn is our fearless tech wizard over here. Thank you very much. So those of you that are online, you can message my account, the Nathaniel account. Jocelyn is looking at the chat right now, DM it or just chat, and she will let me know if there are questions. She'll also let me know comments, concerns, whatever. We have a few of our peer educator interns with the Counseling Center in the room. We got Marcos, Hector, and Caitlin in the back. Hi. We also have Mateus, Alyssa, and Yvonne online. So when we do our breakout groups, they're going to spread around the room too and help you guys out with anything. If you have any questions and stuff like that, you can ask any of them. You can ask me, you can ask Jocelyn. We're going to be good. I think I'm belaboring the point though. Everybody feeling good? Any more questions for me? All right, let's dive into it. Next slide, please. So the goals for today, this is our Recognizing a Friend in Need unit. So basically, we're going to talk first a little bit about mental health trends that are happening around APU. And then we're going to dive into like what you can really do to help somebody who might be struggling, right? And so that's what we call our 4Rs model, and we'll be walking through that. There's basically, it's 4 steps. Each of them starts with R. And then I'm going to do an ad for the Counseling Center at the end, because like I do ads for the Counseling Center. I work there. That's what they pay me to do. Sounds good to everybody? All right, let's get into it. So basically, this obviously is a college, university, right? The number one thing you're here to do is learn. Or at least that's the number one thing you told your parents you're here to do. If you're also here to make friends and hang out and do whatever, like that's cool too, right? But in the end, right, this is a university of higher education, right? And that's what we're supposed to be here for. And so I like to try and connect that, like the reason we would care about mental health at all, to our number one goal of being here, right, which is academics. So you could see these are our most recent data on APU specific academic trends. And basically, these are percentages based on severity, right? So 40% of people, was 39% actually, have done significantly worse academically in the last 12 months because of the stress that they feel, right? Another like 32% because of their anxiety have been struggling academically, not getting things done. You could see a whole bunch of other stuff along the line there. Sleep is really high. Please sleep more than you do. I know it's me, an old person, talking to you, young people, but like, please sleep more than you do. Depression, work, family stresses, activities, relationship concerns, right? All of these factors that impact your stress, impact your mental health, impact your well-being, they're also having a significant negative impact on your academics. So if for no other reason than that, we should be caring about your mental health and wellness and the mental health and wellness of your friends, roommates, etc. Right? But obviously, I'm a counselor, right? Like I care about mental health, not just because it affects your grades. I care about it just in and of itself, right? So if you could give me the next slide, Yoselin. These are APU specific data again, but these are wellness trends, right? So 91% of APU students say at least one time in the last 12 months that they've been extremely overwhelmed. 88%, have said that they were exhausted. 75% very sad. We keep going along the way here. 70% loneliness. 2/3, 66% anxious, 58% hopeless, 45% depressed, and 13% have considered suicide once, at least once in the last 12 months. And that's a pretty scary figure, right? That's you can think about 10%, right? There's probably 20 something of us in this room right now. So at least a couple people in here. Same thing online. There's 20 something of you, a couple people of you online as well. And so when we see these things, they get scary, right? And it gets even worse when you start thinking about like, well, what if this is, somebody that I really care about, right? Not that we don't care about everybody, but maybe this is my best friend, maybe this is my roommate, maybe this is my, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, right? And they come to me for help. Like, what do I do? How do I respond? How can I handle that and make sure that that person gets the help that they need, that they stay safe, that they can start feeling better, right? And so, next slide, please. What I want to say to you right now is like, that nervousness totally makes sense, right? And if you didn't have any nervousness about that, like, I guess like you're either just the calmest person ever, in which case, I guess good on you, right? Or maybe you just don't care about other people, in which case, I guess good on you still too, right? But like, most of us, when we're confronted with nerves like that, you're gonna have at least some level of stress about it, right? And so I want to encourage you that God is with us in these spaces, right? When those big challenging conversations happen, when somebody comes to you in desperate need, right? You're not going to be alone in that space, right? You always have the ability to pray. You always have the ability to lean on support from God in that space, right? And also, hopefully, you're going to have the ability to lean on the tools we're going to teach you today, right? But even if you don't learn these tools perfectly, right? Even if you can't remember exactly what Nathaniel said in that one lecture you had to go to that one time, right? Know that it's going to be okay. And the best you can, your best will be enough, right? And lean into the empathy that you have for the other person, lean into what you're feeling called to do to care for that person, and that will be enough, right? So next slide, please. That takes me into finally my recognize, respond, refer, report, right? 4 R's. Steps are recognizing somebody that's in need, but obviously, if you don't recognize somebody that's in, have no idea that you need to respond, right? So first comes like noticing when our friends or loved ones are off. And then responding to that. What do you individually do to respond? And then how can you refer and report their distress to professionals that can help with them? Right. So that's the way that we make our model, and we make it 4 R's so that it's easier to remember. Although I know it's all the same letter, sometimes that might be confusing too. But go ahead and next slide, please. So we're going to walk through this this whole structure with an example, right? Because if you don't have an example, it's really hard to just follow what in the world I'm talking about, right? So I've got a fake student here that I've made up. The student's name is Pat. Pat is an 18-year-old biblical studies major and an MEL scholar, multi-ethnic leadership program scholar. Pat's always disheveled, however. He has dark rings under his eyes. Much of the time, he's preoccupied or unable to focus during classes, during meetings, during work. And you're wondering about Pat. Does Pat seem to be doing okay? No. Okay, right, exactly. You guys got that one pretty well off pretty quick. Either throw in the chat or just shout them out for me. What do we see that makes us know that Pat is obviously not okay? So difficulty focusing is a huge one. And a lot of y'all, you need to focus a lot because your students and like classrooms, they make you focus a ton, which is a little bit annoying, I know. But like focus is something that gets disrupted like with almost any kind of mental health distress, right? No matter what it is that you're going through, it's gonna affect your ability to like do math, right? Because you're gonna be thinking about other stuff. Physical appearance, right? So he's disheveled, right? And he's got dark rings under his eyes. Now, when we talk about physical appearance, like I don't want you just like going out to your one like slob looking friend and being like, are you having a mental health emergency, right? Because that's not what I'm trying to say here, right? What I'm trying to say here is that when these kinds of things become habitual, or even more so, when these kinds of things in terms of people's like uh uh just general physical hygiene and things like that take a sharp decline, right? Like say you have a friend whose outfit is like always on point, and then all of a sudden they're just showing up in like a hoodie and sweats to everything, right? Like that massive change is a big deal, right? Or just also if this dark rings under his eyes, right? This indicates this lack of sleep, physical mannerisms that physical signs that correlate to that, right? So recognizing we're pretty good with the obvious signs. You guys can already do that. You nail them, right? You also might notice increased substance use, right? Or somebody that's just straight out intoxicated when they're talking, right? Okay, if they're so drunk they can't stand up, like obviously there's something going on. Marked deterioration of personal hygiene, we covered that already. Uncontrollable crying or angry outbursts, right? The idea is that the emotion that they're feeling, most of us, we try and button down that emotion a little bit. Some of us are more expressive, some of us are less expressive, right? But as a general rule, most of us aren't crying uncontrollably, just like on Cougar Walk, right? Unless something's really going down, right? Preoccupation with death or dying, somebody that's strange or bizarre behavior, they're speaking incoherently, they're talking about hallucinations that they're seeing, right? Like you didn't need my lecture to know that these are signs that somebody might be going through something, right? Next slide, please. Less obvious signs, though, I think are important for us to nail as well. So somebody might be anxious or nervous, right? You know, excessive anxiety could really have something to do with all this kind of stuff, right? Or again, we covered concentration difficulty already, right? Some people may just think, oh, it's like hard concentration. Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? But if somebody's consistently having difficulty concentrating, maybe they're really preoccupied with something else. Low frustration tolerance there. I don't know if any of you have felt this way before, but you know, there's always just like one more thing and you just like can't handle it, right? Well, somebody that has a really short fuse that just can't handle it, right? That's probably because they've got a bunch of things already that they're trying to handle, right? And so that can be a thing. Fatigue and reports of sleeplessness, weight gain or weight loss, right? Again, this is not like about judgments of people's physical appearance or anything like that, but like significant changes in their appetite, right? Whether they're not eating all of a sudden or whether they're overeating all of a sudden, right? These could be signs that they're dealing with some kind of stress. Excessive procrastination is another one here. I hear this all the time when I'm working with students. Like people feel so bad about themselves, like, oh, I'm like slacking in all of my classes and I'm like terrible and I feel so guilty and I'm an awful human being, right? Well, I mean, I guess maybe, right? Some of the time, probably you are being lazy, but most of the time I've found that people don't procrastinate because they're lazy, right? People more often procrastinate because of something about the task they've been given, right? It's somehow overwhelming to them. Maybe they're way too anxious about whatever this homework thing is and about getting it wrong and about failing, right? Maybe that they can't get the essay started, right? Or maybe they're so depressed that they can't even get out of bed. How are they gonna, you know, like do this presentation for this class or something like that, right? And so oftentimes procrastination isn't just a symptom of laziness, it's a symptom of underlying distress that's causing somebody not to be able to engage, right? Changes in performance or extreme dependency. Extreme dependency is that always need your help with the littlest things, can't do anything by themselves, right? Any one of these warning signs just by themselves, probably not like the reason to immediately like get stressed out about it, right? But as they start piling up, the more and more they do, the more and more likely it is that potentially somebody's going through something, right? And if somebody's going through something, then maybe we are emboldened to ask, right? Because sometimes our friends will come to us and they'll say, I'm not doing okay, right? And then we'll know we can skip right into the responding phase, right? But most of the time we won't do that, right? Because think about ourselves, we wouldn't do that either, right? Oftentimes we maybe feel too much pride, or we maybe feel too much embarrassment, or we maybe feel too much guilt or whatever. But it's hard to reach out to somebody else. It's hard to tell somebody how you're doing, right? And so if you're the caring friend, right, maybe you just ask. And then that lets the person just admit it and say, yes, I'm not doing okay, rather than having to have the courage themselves to go up and say, hey, I'm not okay. Can you please listen to me and talk to me right now, right? So next slide, please. Those are some warning signs for online stuff. We're doing way less online stuff nowadays. So if you want to know more about warning signs you can do when you're Zoom calling somebody, email me. I'll talk to you more about them. But let's get back into Pat here. So you express your concern for Pat's well-being. You ask him how he's doing. Good on you. You recognized his early signs of need. And then Pat breaks down immediately, tearfully admitting that he's been feeling miserable ever since the breakup with his girlfriend. He relates he can't sleep, he can't concentrate, he has no motivation to do anything anymore. He's considering dropping out of APU. Miserable, yeah, exactly. That's a pretty strong word, miserable, right? Yeah, it's immediately, and it's tears everywhere, right? Yeah, that's fine. I'm not here to hate on people that cry, right? I'm literally a therapist. Like half the time it's my job to make you cry, right? But like obviously when you're breaking those social norms like that, that clearly means something's probably weighing on you pretty strong. Yeah, considering dropping out of APU. That's a great one, right? Not because like I would love all of you to stay at APU, obviously, because I think APU is great. Maybe some of you, this is not the right spot for you though. And that's okay. I mean, transfer someone else or, take a break from school for a while. That's fine. So I don't want to judge Pat for thinking about dropping out of APU. I do want to judge Pat for dropping out when he's in the middle of a mental health episode, right? Generally, when we're in the middle of a mental health episode, we don't want to make big life altering decisions, right? You want to take a breath, you want to sleep on it, you want to make that decision when you're having a little bit more clarity and peace of mind, right? And so these big rash decision-making things are good things to notice that might be indicators of something going wrong. He just broke up with his girlfriend, right? So there's something directly that recently happened that's really messing him up, right? And that can be a big deal, right? I mean, depending on the level that you're engaged in your relationship or whatever, right? But a cause that's really recent, right? Well, I guess it doesn't give you a time frame specifically on here, right? But it's recent enough that it's still bothering. All right. I think we nailed it. One other one I want to say is motivation, right? Motivation is something that's very common in sort of sadness and depression types of things, right? And so the lack of motivation can definitely be another thing that we want to pay attention for. All right, that's looking good. Thank you all very much. We're doing pretty good at recognizing things. I'm going to share out a handout here. It's got like 5 or 6 scenarios on it, all of which are people in one level of mental health need or another. Now, again, these are some sensitive topics, so please just take it easy, go through them at your own pace, right? The number one thing that I want you to do when responding to somebody is just meet them where they're at, right? You've probably had those experiences before where somebody really like gets you. And in those spaces, right, you can feel like heard, you can feel known, you can feel understood in a way that like if somebody just immediately comes and gives you advice, like probably won't help, right? So like if somebody for example, like we just covered the potential eating disorder with Hannah, right? If you just come up to Hannah and be like, you're losing too much weight and I'm worried about you and you need to eat more calories right now, like, okay, I mean, true, but like, is Hannah gonna listen to you? Like, no, right? Is Hannah gonna feel heard and supported by you? No, right? And so when we respond to somebody in need, the first thing we should do before like trying to like solve any problems or anything like that is really just try and listen intently and connect with the emotion that's going on, right? So, take the person seriously, take your time, ask questions that show that you care. Listen attentively. You can practice what's called solar posture. Basically, like if you want to like square up to the person that you're talking to, I'm going to talk to you for a second if that's okay. I'll stay back over here. Open up your shoulders, like close down in a posture, right? You want to make eye contact with whoever you're talking to, and you're going to want to lean in slightly to show that you're paying attention, right? This is how generally within Western academic culture, we show that we're paying attention to somebody, right? But the biggest thing is relax here in our solar acronym, right? Remember to keep your nonverbals, remember to lean in, remember to pay attention. But the biggest thing to do is relax. Because if you relax and you try to think, okay, I know I'm overwhelmed right now. I know I'm really scared for my friend right now, but I know I went to that one lecture that Nathaniel gave me that one time. So I feel equipped and I know that God too is with me in this space. I'm going to try and take a deep breath and just be present in this moment. Be a person in this moment that can connect to somebody else who's in pain, right? That's what's going to make somebody feel the most heard and known. And that's going to help instill the most hope in them that things could change, that things could get better, right? And so that's what, if I was going to write the 4 R's out, I'd probably write like a little R, like a really big R for respond, and then 2 more kind of littleish R's for refer and report, right? Because this is the heart of everything that you're doing, right? You are not, well, I don't know all of your backgrounds, maybe some of you are licensed mental health professionals, in which case, great, good work, keep up the good work, right? But most of us are not, right? And even if we were, right, like if we're talking about somebody that we know that's in need, our friend, our family member, whatever, right? We're not going to be their therapist, right? Because you can't, you're impartial, right? You're not impartial, right? Like that's not going to ethically work, right? And so we can't be the therapist to somebody. We can't solve all their problems. We can't be the professional that gets them the help or medicine or whatever it is that they need, right? But we can be the friend that listens, understands, cares, and walks alongside somebody to eventually connect to those professional resources, right? And that's what I want you to do. Feeling good? All right. I've belabored this point too long. Can I get the next one? Things not to do. Don't leave someone with suicidal thoughts like alone until you can connect them to somebody, that can talk to them. If they're an APU student, I mean, we have our APU 24/7 line, but also if it's anybody, right, like there's the National Crisis Text Line, there's the National Lifeline at 988, there's lots of professional resources available, right? And so that's a critical thing. Just if you're concerned for somebody's safety, get a professional involved right away, if they're not concerned for their safety, convince them like, hey, let's go talk to a pastor about this. Let's go talk to a therapist about this. Let's go do whatever. But like, we could do that tomorrow morning. Like, that's fine, right? But if it's a safety concern, use one of those 24/7 resources. That's what they're there for, right? Don't debate or argue with somebody or lecture about their morality, right? Like, this is like, of course, ridiculous. Like, you are a bad person for feeling sad, right? We know not to do that, right? But sometimes there are those negative stereotypes and those negative impulses, especially when we talk about things that are stigmatized. Like we were talking about substance use a minute ago, right? Somebody's struggling with a substance abuse problem, scolding them for it is not going to do them any good, right? But what I more want to highlight is this challenging someone's beliefs about themselves, right? And this one's kind of counterintuitive sometimes, but like if somebody's really hurting, if somebody's really depressed, right? And they say, I just feel so worthless. I feel like nobody cares about me. I feel like my life has no purpose. I feel like it would be better if I was just dead, right? I can say to that person, no, everybody loves you, right? Like I love you and all these other people love you. You should be really happy and you're the best person I've ever met, right? And that's the natural impulse we feel because if we see somebody hurting so bad, we want to lift them up out of that hurt. We want to challenge their beliefs about themselves. We want to make them know that they're important, right? But if we do that, we just miss a huge space there, right? Because all of a sudden they're just thinking, this person doesn't get it. This person's not listening to me. This person doesn't truly understand how I feel, right? And so it's much better when we're talking about responding to somebody in need, right? Just to join with them, say, I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. That must feel so awful, right? I've felt that way before at X, Y, or Z time. Or maybe you haven't felt that way before. You say something, I couldn't imagine how that must feel, right? How hard it must feel to like think that you're totally worthless. And I don't believe that about you. I think differently about you, but I know that it's not my thoughts that matter, it's your thoughts, right? But that response is much more empathic, much more connecting, and going to produce a lot better results when you're dealing with somebody who's really struggling, right? Because if somebody could just be picked up by a quick pep talk like that, right? they would have been already, right? They wouldn't have gotten this suppressed in the first place if that kind of pep talk step was going to work on them, right? Okay, next slide. So now we're going to go ahead and do another breakout group here. We're going to go ahead and practice this a little bit. So you recognize the person that is in need, right? You responded really empathically to them. You made them feel heard. You made them feel known. You make them hopefully feel that there's hope going forward, right? But we still haven't solved any of the problems, right? And so that's where refer and report can come in. So some extra questioning leads you to believe that Pat has hope that things can get better and he doesn't know what to do next. And you say, hey, you want to get connected to APU resources? And he's like, yeah. And so you're like, okay, let me refer you now. So even the next one. One of the nice things, since you are all APU students, right? And not necessarily will the other people that you're talking to be APU students. And so sometimes these resources may not be available to them. But if you, as an APU student, or if you're helping someone who's also an APU student, there are like a bajillion things that you have available to you here on campus, right? You have the University Counseling Center. That's me. Hooray. But you also have things like the Academic Success Center. If somebody's just really struggling in class, right? You have the Student Service Center to figure out all the financial aid and all the different stuff that's going on, whatever gets messed up. You have our Office of Campus Ministry. If somebody feels more comfortable speaking to a spiritual leader and getting spiritual guidance, right? They do confidential pastoral counseling there. We obviously have our campus safety. Somebody's like, a victim of a crime. Somebody's concerned about their welfare, right? We have our Accessibility and Disability Resource Center for anybody that's, maybe going through something really hard right now. It's making it impossible to get to class, making it impossible to pay attention, whatever those kinds of things are. We can also get accommodations through the ADR that you could, change around your classes and get things worked out. We have our Center for Reconciliation and Diversity here on campus too. If somebody's going through a lot of stress, feeling like they don't fit in on campus, right? Their various identities aren't really, represented here as well, right? There's all kinds of different resources available. And so suggesting any of those resources can be a really good thing, right? And just saying, hey, let's go together to the counseling center and make an appointment, right? Or, hey, let's go together to the Student Success Center and just get this figured out, right? I know it's scary. I will go with you. We will pound on that door until somebody comes out and solves this financial aid mess that's happening that's stressing you out, right? I will go with you to the campus pastor's office and we can find somebody to help pray with us and work on the situation, right? All of those resources are available to you. And that can be a great way for you to not have to solve the problem, right? But for you to come alongside somebody and say, let's go together. Let's do this together. Because it's always scary to do something on your own, right? And so when you refer somebody to a resource, don't just say hey, you should go do that, right? Go there with them, do that with them, right? And that's going to help them successfully connect to the resources that can really help them out, that can really help solve the problems that they might be going through, right? Now, somebody might not be super open to this right away, and that's okay, right? But, persistence in this and caring and love and saying I really care about you. I really think this is important. Could you just do it for me as a favor to me? That kind of things. Pull on those kinds of heartstrings here, right? I am telling you to manipulate people a little bit, but use your powers for good, not for evil, right? Use that relational capital that you have with your friend or family member or whatever to convince them to seek the care that they need, right? Next slide. One of the places you could do that is the University Counseling Center. So the University Counseling Center, it employs me, which is great. It employs our interns and our graduate coordinator as well. But more so than that, what the University Counseling Center does is we provide you 100% free HIPAA confidential counseling services for the totality of your career as an APU student. And you'll probably never have better mental health access than this ever, right? Because once you graduate, you gotta somehow get insurance through your job or buy it somehow, get enough money to do that. Then you got to find somebody that takes your insurance that's somewhat close by, and you got to make time in your schedule to drive out to wherever their office is, et cetera, right? It can be challenging to find a counselor sometimes, right? That's why BetterHelp, you see ads for it all over the place, right? Because they're really trying to help connect people. And even then, it's still a little bit, some of those apps are sketchy and weird, right? So you don't have to worry about that. You've got our counseling center right here on East Campus. We're in the Shire Mods, past the baseball fields. So basically across the street from In-N-Out, if you're not familiar with the east side of campus. And we are open Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. Just come on in. And we have 24/7 urgent care over the phone as well at that number, that's 626-815-2109. We do Zoom appointments, we do phone appointments for those of you that are commuters, or for those of you that live in UV and just can't be bothered to walk all the way to Shire. Like, we can also see you on the phone or over Zoom. And you can also make an appointment online now, right? You can go to your My Cougar Health profile. It's through your APU Now app or through the website. You can find it there. So please feel free to make an appointment if you need us, right? Or we're focusing mostly on responding to friends in need right now. Tell your friend this, right? And say that, hey, we'll walk over together and make an appointment, or hey, we'll call together, or hey, let's just bring out your phone right now and get you scheduled on the online scheduler, right? You could do that too in the morning. You don't need to call and talk to somebody, right? Next slide, please. This is where we're at. This is the Magnolia Court. This is just past the baseball fields, like the second set of mods. That's the Student Health Center on this side, a nice glass door. That's us on the other side with our thick wooden door that doesn't have a cool glass panel like they do. This is called Magnolia Court because there used to be a Magnolia here, but don't look for it now, it died. But it's still called Magnolia Court. So that's where you can find us if you're looking for us, and if you need your friend to come find us or come get help. Next slide, please. If somebody is ever in immediate risk, I talked about this before, like if somebody's suicidal, right? Please just go ahead and call 911 and do things like that. If somebody has a weapon, if somebody's already ingested a toxic substance, this is going to be very uncommon. But if your friend really needs that much need, please start there. But most of the time, start with us at the counseling center. And then our final R is report, right? And this is a little bit weird because obviously you want to protect the anonymity of your friend that you're trying to support. And like they're gonna say, hey, can you keep a secret or whatever, right? Like, you want to respect that. You want to treat that with care, concern, and caution, right? But if it's just you and your friend, and you've recognized what they need, you've responded to them really well, you've referred them to all the resources you know about, but you don't know all of the resources that actually exist, right? Because who can memorize them all? I can't even memorize them all. It's my full-time job to work here and know about resources, right? But their resources change, the locations, maybe you don't know where a certain office is, maybe you don't know about like what are the operating hours of our food pantry. Did you know we have what's called a Valentine Fund, which is an emergency funds that donors have given to support students that are in need. If you're maybe have a relative pass away and can't afford the flight back to the funeral or something like that, right? We have all these other rich resources here that like no one person can ever really be thought of as knowing all of them. So we have what's called our APU care system here, right? And our APU care system is, they call it a wellness concierge, basically. Like if you go up to the hotel concierge and say like, hey, where is this? Or how do I do that? Blah, blah, blah. They walk you through all the steps, right? So if you or somebody else who's an APU student is in need, it's great to report yourself or have them report themselves to our APU Cares form. You say, hey, I'm in distress right now. This, and this is going on. Can somebody please reach out to me and tell me all of the resources available at APU that might be able to help me out? And then somebody will do that. Somebody will reach out to you within a week or 2 weeks over email saying like, hey, these are all the different resources that might be available for you that you might want to use. Which ones are you interested in? Oh, I'm interested in these ones. Okay, well, here's how you connect with those people. Here's the person I know over in that office. You want to go to this place with this form and hand it to this person, and that'll help you skip through the line and all the rigmarole, right? Navigate the system better. And we all know that whenever we're really distressed, like that's when it's hardest to like fill out forms or figure out where stuff is or all that. Like I'm too busy like crying right now and being depressed right now. Like I don't need to try to figure all of that out on my own. And so that's why APU has this APU care system, because we want you to succeed, right? And we want you to be able to connect to those systems. So even though it's weird to think about reporting, right? This is confidential as well. Like nobody knows about it, right? It's just sent out to the appropriate resources around campus, right? So people around campus will know, and as much as the very specific people at those very specific offices will know, and they will keep all that information private. It's not like it's going to go out on blast to like random people or professors or anything like that. So please use that resource if you would like to use it. It's called APU Cares, and you can just go like, it's in your APU Now app, everything's in your APU Now app, but you can also just Google APU Cares and it'll pop right up. And you can put in a report for yourself, you can put in a report for a friend, however you want to do it. Next slide, please. So that's all I really got for today. I'm not going to do any more breakout groups. Let's just do this like individually on our own here. Hopefully you learned something today. fingers crossed you learned something today, right? So think back to all the stuff we talked about today, all the different things we did today. What's one thing that was really surprising to you? Because if it was surprising to you, that's something you should probably learn and remember, right? And what's one behavior you're going to commit to doing? Maybe it's going to be, I'm going to try and recognize more often when my friends are errand me or something like that. Or I'm going to try and remember to just respond empathically, right? So take 2 seconds, think about it. What did you learn today? And how are you going to use that in your week? Okay. I'll give you, I don't know, a few minutes to do that. In the meantime, let's go to the next slide, Ghislaine. Thank you very much for being here. We'll stick around for questions.